unverifiable voting in 2000.
Like you said, to Trump, but they're getting greedy.
He said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsement from Georgia carry that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Sunday special live stream. We've been on air a lot this weekend, so I kind of look at it like a snow day when you get one of them extra days that where you have nothing to do and just free reign. Use it to the best of your ability. So this is a special Sunday. I've got State Representative Mitchell Horner here with me. How you doing, Mitchell?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Roy.
Yes, he's from. I'm gonna pull this mic up just a little bit. You're fine. And he represents District 3, correct?
Yes, sir. Catoosa County.
Catoosa County, Georgia. So he is our neighboring state rep over here next to Steve Tarvin, Mike Cameron, and all this North Georgia area. So welcome to the show, man. It's,
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've been
for a long time.
We've been talking about this for quite a while, and yours truly, if not the best at scheduling things. So I really wanted to get this one in before the start of legislative session, which is tomorrow, Monday the 13th, right at the Gold Dome. So I thought this would be a great time, and we were going to try to do this on Friday, and because of the weather, we had our snow in the area, so the roads are looking good today, and he agreed to come in with me. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
So if you guys out there want to share it to your local groups, we're gonna talk a lot about just things in Georgia in general, things that I set out a list here that I showed him when he came in the studio about a lot of things that people are talking about here on the street, and then kind of pick his brain about the opening legislation, what to look for in 25 and everything. So, and we will be doing comments. So if you have a comment, I'm not doing a call-in show today because I don't have my cord with me. But like I said, drop a comment if you've got a question or concern. Mitchell's not one to shy away from anything really.
That's what I'm here for.
I went to their school board millage rate increase, and he was right there in the front row, taking notes, watching everything going on. And we've all have witnessed and seen what these school board millage rates have done across the state. And so, obviously taxes are a big issue. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. So I appreciate it. And before we get into our discussion, just kind of tell the audience who you are, and just give us some background.
I'm State Representative Mitchell Horner. I'm going into my second term. Tomorrow we start session, like Roy was talking about, and very excited about it. Kind of wish I was staying home, but I'm ready for work at the same time. So what I do every day is I drive down there. I don't stay in Atlanta. I can't stand Atlanta. You got to cleanse the soul a little bit with North Georgia air. And so so I come back every day. Been serving for 2 years. I love and hate it. It's the best way to put it.
Right.
And honestly, I just love the issues. I love talking about the issues. I love hearing my constituents' needs and what they really need at the time. And especially on the tax issue. Taxes are my area of specialty. Budgets and I'm a fiscal nerd. So any type of policy, that's my love. That's why I don't, like Roy was saying, I don't shy away from any questions, because honestly, this is what I love talking about. I love talking about the policy. I'm not a small talker. I love policy. I love digging into the details, and so I look forward to just diving right into it.
Right. That's a good thing. We've got some really strong leadership up here in North Georgia. I'm a big fan of Colton Moore, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Our state reps up here seem to care about what's going on up here and listen to the people quite a bit. So we're really lucky, because I don't think that a whole lot of places in Georgia have the kind of representation that we have.
Oh, absolutely. And the wonderful thing is we honestly all work well together down at the Capitol. Tarvin, myself, Colton, we keep in contact almost every day. We have all sorts of different issues that each one is handling and focused on.
Right.
Tarvin has been a wonderful mentor to me in my first 2 years of how to handle the House and how to handle the slow progress of the Gold Dome.
Right.
And so, we are very blessed to have the leadership that we do up here, especially at the state capitol. They listen to your concerns, they care,
right,
and they understand the terrible choices that some of our state leadership make. Is the best way to put it.
I mean, I'm not going to shy away. I think there's a lot that needs to be done in our Georgia legislature. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
In the last 4 years, we've let some things go on entirely too long that should have been nipped in the bud. So
Georgia is. I'm a pessimist and an optimist. We're definitely one of the top states in a lot of different categories, but at the same time, we have a long way to go.
Yeah, we do, and it's kind of a shame. We're Republican led, and we need to keep it that way. But we're going to have to find and maintain more Republican leadership who's willing to do the things that well, frankly, this past few administrations hadn't wanted to do.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that I vastly see differently than state leadership. Something state leadership loves to talk about is, well, we have a slim majority, so we got to protect those seats and, right around the Atlanta Beltway. And I see it the opposite. I mean, you see it in Florida, you see it in other states that have grown their Republican majorities so quickly and so radically, is because they went to what our people want, to the red meat issues.
That's right.
I mean, just frankly, to put it, our state leadership, the minute we have the highest record turnout in Northwest Georgia and Northeast Georgia, conservative Republican-based supporters coming out, and they go, well, you know what we really need? Medicaid expansion.
Right, exactly.
It's like, where's the connect?
Yes.
Why? And they're like, well, we have 4 or 5 seats. We would have more if we listened to our people, if we drove our turnout, if we pushed the state into making the hard choices that we do need to make.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so that's something. I mean, I have 3 little girls, and I want them to grow up in the best state in the union.
Right.
But it means making hard choices and realizing what the problems are. A lot of times, I find that even understanding what the problems are and agreeing to what the problems are is really the first step. And it's even hard to just get over that hump half the time.
No, I agree. And let's be honest, right? We've dealt with a Biden administration for the last 4 years. We've dealt with these clown world like RICO cases, these corrupt DA judges. We've dealt with all of this federal pushes around our state. So it's kind of putting, I would say, a lot of our weaker legislation in limbo, right? They're too scared to to do anything and too afraid to make their constituents mad or whatnot. And then you see this dramatic shift in the 2025 presidency, where even in the very high blue counties, even the metro counties, you see the Republican votes continuing to climb in all different races and all different backgrounds, different diversities. And now it's almost as if like the fact that we've elected Donald Trump back in fully, we're fully awaiting on this inauguration. We're waiting on this sort of dream team political team up in D.C. Now you're seeing people like Zuckerberg, who is willing to bow at the feet of, you're seeing all these changes. All these companies are taking this woke DEI, this crap out of the things that we've just been begging them, right? Mm-hmm. So you're starting, I think what we're seeing is the playing field sort of level out, right? I'm hoping that moving into 2025, it's opening up doorways and alleyways for some of those weaker folks to like get on board with the things we need to do.
I hope so, but honestly, Atlanta is like it's just so slow. It's like a glacier moving to move. Honestly, anything conservative down.
Yeah.
I mean, the speaker came out with some of his legislative priorities, and we'll go into more detail in a minute about that. But one of the things is no girls in boys sports,
right?
Or no boys in girls sports, vice versa. And the problem is, we could have had this 4 years ago.
Exactly. That's my point.
It's common sense solutions.
Weak and feckless, man.
Exactly.
Why?
And
How?
now they're like, oh, we could probably do this. Well, yeah, you could have done this 4 years ago.
Better late than never, I guess.
And that's the fundamental problem is we have these individuals who, frankly, we need courage at the State House.
Yes.
We need to be pushing these legislative priorities forward. I hope we do. Mm-hmm. But that being said, is whenever we even get close to the finish line, we have 2 or 3 Republicans, kind of like in Washington.
Yes.
And they're like, well, we don't fully agree with the route these radical Republicans are taking us. And we're not radical. We're just, the reason I fundamentally believe that we see such a swing this election is these are common sense solutions.
Exactly. The people are getting tired of these narratives.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Democratic Party offers nothing.
No.
They offer craziness. It's a clown show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's literally just a visible representation of Sodom and Gomorrah at this point.
Yes, 100%.
And I mean, they offer nothing. They offer higher taxes. I mean, you're seeing their solutions come to play just in this wildfire in California.
Oh my God.
This is what the Democratic governments build and provide, and this is their services you get for 45% taxes. I mean, I saw a newspaper article today, and it was like people like, well, we expected the government to take care of us, and that's our fundamental problem. Mm-hmm. We expected government to take care of us.
How well did that go over in this last hurricane up here?
And I love Reagan's old quote. The most worrious, most problematic thing is when somebody comes to your door and says, I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
Here to help. Right.
And I mean, it's true. We see it even today.
Sure.
And people think that government have these solutions. They are not in any way, shape, or form a solution. They are most likely the cause of the problem.
No, and that's super sad, man. That's why I'm so excited to see this Doge happen. Like, let's start cutting the fat out of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Let us stop wasting the taxpayer money. Stop wasting all of these resources on things that go to absolutely zero, and get us back to this less government style running where things right the ship, balance the budget.
No, you're exactly. That's my love. I love auditing.
Right.
Because I fundamentally believe money will tell you everything you want to know about somebody. It'll tell you their priorities, their honest priorities. It'll tell you what they're saving for, what they're spending for, and where their vices are. It'll tell you everything you want to know about them.
Yeah.
And it says the same thing about a society. And so if you look, I mean, we need something like that for the state of Georgia, and that's something that I want to see in the next 4 or 6 years that I'm working towards. It's called a Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee. We have one in the House.
Okay.
It met one time in 2 years to audit the government, and we didn't even audit. It was just more of a setting up the committee, saying hi to everybody, and leaving.
Jesus.
I am the second highest ranking Republican on that committee. And they it's a nothing committee, so they give it. But I fundamentally believe we can, and I've pushed this to leadership the last year. I'm like, we need to, because frankly, when it comes to even how we pass a budget, when we pass a budget, it comes to our desk an hour beforehand. We look at it. I promise you, there's very few in that chamber that understand what and know what to look for.
I believe you.
And so I'm going through and I'm just marking everything. Like, I'm like, nah. And you have to weigh it very quickly on your conscience of, and I actually grade each budget. And I put it up on my Facebook, and I say, This last budget was about 87%. There is a lot of corporate subsidies. There's all sorts of things that I don't fundamentally agree with. But there's also some very good points that I would love to go into that I think pushes that ball over. One, we have no new debt in the last 2 years I served.
That's true.
I mean, that's something that no other Republican representative can say for the last 30 years, and that's a sad state of affairs, but it's true.
Right.
So that was the big push that I wanted to see. I don't want any more debt in our state budget.
Sure.
Education spending and transportation spending also was where we were able to push some of these funds that we desperately needed
Yes.
to, and we'll go into that further in a minute.
Okay.
But going back to it, we know how to spend the money. We do not know how to make sure that money goes to what it goes for, and we
Right.
don't do anything where we're supposed to as a
Right.
check and balance saying,
Well,
whoa.
I mean, I have to balance my budget every month, every week, don't
And-
you?
Exactly. And what happens when at the end of the month you're like, oh, I have $1,000 excess of spending.
Well, they're gonna
we should go
start-
look into it, right?
Yeah.
Instead, the government goes, it's fine.
Yeah.
And that's the fundamental problem.
Well, if you do it, they're going to cut your internet off. They're going to cut your phone off. They're going your power is going to go off.
Exactly.
Right? There's an accountability there.
Exactly, and that's the problem is when it comes. I see this in even local businesses because I did a lot of bookkeeping. That was my primary job before I was elected, and I love it. And again, because it's like psychology of money. They'll tell you everything you want to know.
Right.
And the same thing with the state. We don't audit. We don't check. The state officials that are state elected and. They technically don't have to spend the money the way we allocate them. I mean,
Right.
legally they're supposed to, but we don't checks, and they
Right.
know that. So they get this bundle of money, and then they spend it, and that's how you get all these holes in the ship, and it slogs the ship down. And I mean, it's just a terrible way of doing business. And so, what I would love to see is a Doge committee in this committee. Let's put every single one of them up. Every single
Right.
department head. There's 53 departments in the state of
Sure.
Georgia. Let's all every single week. That's one a week.
Well, let me ask you, a lot of some of this also comes back to, let's talk about like kickbacks and stuff like that. So obviously we've got a huge lobbying committee all over the country, but what is your personal take on lobbyists? I mean, they're there to sell products to our legislators.
They are.
Obviously we know that there are kickbacks and money to be made and things that will benefit. So how does all that kind of tie into this?
So it ties in a couple of ways. One, that's mainly where tax rebates come from.
Okay.
So there's the budget, and then there's what's called tax expenditure report. They're two vastly different things. Some states put in the same, basically, and we are talking about putting in the same bill, basically, so that we have to pass these tax expenditures and make. But that's where we get the film tax credits. That's where we get manufacturing tax credits. That's where we get all these tax credits that support corporations.
Okay.
And banks and all sorts of different, any kind of niche. And what a tax expenditure is, you take your tax money and you give you a tax credit for it. So you do X and we'll provide you Y.
Okay.
And so this tax expenditure report is billions of dollars in giveaways to offer jobs and offer other incentives in the state of Georgia.
That's like the abatements. Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's
Sort of?
just a rebate. It's tax
Okay.
rebates, tax
Okay.
credit. And there's a housing tax credit. There's all these different tax credits that line up. Mainly the biggest one is our film tax credit. And it's $1 billion. So we take roughly $35 billion in income tax, and we give about $1 billion back to film tax industry, and basically say, come to the state of Georgia. And I fundamentally disagree with all of that.
Sure.
premise.
I mean, Hollywood is pretty much burning right now, while
Absolutely.
Hollywood is very safe and nestled inside of Atlanta.
I mean, not only that, but there's no checks and balance on this tax credit. And our state senator Colt Moore was the one that really showed. He brought up the issue in his election campaign.
Right.
And that's when I went to him. I was like, I've never heard of this issue before. Let's look at it. And the more you look at it, the more it's just a terrible tax credit, because it's $1 billion.
Yes.
So $1 billion is equivalent to lunch and breakfast for every student in the state of Georgia for a year.
Right.
And so this tax credit is $1 billion. It's $1 billion of tax, less tax we could have as citizens, and that builds up the actual wealth of the state.
You think it worked the other way with Hollywood. You think they'd be begging to pay the state of Georgia to be here. You know what I'm saying?
Invest, but no, the opposite. I mean, the tax credits are so loosely built to where if executive flies in and flies out, they can get a tax credit in the state of Georgia. I mean, it is a ridiculous
It is.
concept. And so I was going. Then this goes into the lobbyist question. So I went to the state. I went to the state 2 years ago. I want to change the film tax credits. We have to have more accountability. I want to get rid of them, but I knew as a freshman you're not going to get rid of them.
Right, we're talking reality.
Exactly.
Here, right? Yeah.
And so I'm like, what can I do? So I drafted a bill on how we could start scaling back. It's called transferability, to where, Roy, you get this tax credit and you give it to me for 50 cents on the dollar. You get 50 cents cash.
Right.
I get $1 of tax credit. So either way, we're both good.
Right.
And that's called transferability. We allow that in our tax credit.
Yes.
And I wanted to end something like that. And, just start nipping it away. And so I drafted the bill. I got it all worked up. I only had 2 other co-signers because everybody's like, "Oh no, the people in the hall would kill us and wouldn't give us anything, any support come re-election." And so it's not that they're getting kickbacks; they're getting kickbacks when it comes to re-election and funding their campaign.
Sure.
And so, the problem is there is a lot of lobbyists down there that drive their state representatives, where they're like, "Well, can you push this bill that I really need across the finish line?"
Exactly.
And they're like, "Oh, that's a cool idea," and then they just carry it because they don't know that detail well enough to know how all of these functions work underneath the surface, and so it gives them a business incentive over their competitors.
Sure, it does. Yeah.
And so I always love Adam. I'm a big economist at heart. And Adam Smith always said when businessmen arrive in a room and they talk together, there's always conspiracy. And there's always a way to screw the consumer.
Right.
And that's how I still fundamentally believe and think is when regulation, people are like, well, who pushes all these regulations? Corporations. They want the regulations because it pushes out the little men because
Exactly.
they can't compete with all these additional regulated red tape that
Sure.
it's just a permit here, it's a permit there, it builds up
It's the
to
same way lawsuits work and everything else. Even if you have a case, you better be prepared to spend some money because that's what they're going to do is make you spend that money
Exactly.
regardless. Well, I'm glad we're going into the tax part of this because I have a couple of questions,
Absolutely.
right? And I want to highlight some legislation that you pretty much commandeered this legislation, right? But what? Okay. Here's a question from the people, right? So
Absolutely.
a lot of the talk, we've been talking about Georgia tax court. A lot of legislators don't even know what it was. It was supposedly a good thing. The big selling point to the tax court is that, well, it takes your tax exemption, battles out of the Fulton County Tribunal and puts it into a more easier way to go into lawfare with your taxes, whatever, exemplify them. We've talked about this new homestead tax exemption, which we're going to get into, but a lot of people are confused, right? Georgia has upwards of at least a $15 billion surplus, right? We're way out there. Why is the conversation always centered around making it easier for the common man to face their taxes? Why aren't we talking more in our legislature about eliminating taxes, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
we have income tax, state income tax. We have these property taxes that can be leveraged in millage rates for schools. Why can't we start having a conversation around it's time to start eliminating some taxes?
Absolutely. And I'm all for eliminating the state income tax. I ran on it.
Right.
And on that note, real quick, I supported a bill to just put a study committee together on how we could. Let's just ask the question,
Right.
how? And unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But there are ideas out there on how we could eliminate the income tax. The problem is, most of the time, it's offsetting with a sales tax, right? Or an offsetting of something else tax, consumption tax, or other ways of doing it.
A Georgia Doge would fix that, wouldn't it?
And that's the problem. You first have to limit your spending.
Right.
And then the other way is cut back your taxes that are unproductive. And which ones benefit us by cutting back while also growing. Like I always use I'm a big William Pitt fan.
Okay.
Who doesn't know about William Pitt? He's the prime minister after the American Revolution.
Okay.
Between 1793 and roughly 1805, roughly. His first Napoleonic War, so he had so many different things on his plate. One of the major things that was on his plate... Sorry, I need to turn...
No, you're good.
There we go. There we go. And one of the major things on his plate was a massive debt of 250%.
Okay.
Per GDP. So 3 times even what the United States is now.
Right.
And so what he did is what's called a sinking fund. Is he created this kind of savings account that was able to pay off the debt, and he limited spending. But the reason why I want to bring this up is the tax on tea. There was so much smuggling going around because the tax rate was so high. It was just easier to smuggle. See, people think that the government can just, tax and regulate our way into this perfect utopia. But the problem is you're just creating this black market source.
Sure,
The people
sure.
are just they're gonna do it. They're just gonna find a better way to do it instead of, the legal tax code.
Right.
And so that's kind of where we're getting to in the state of Georgia is people are finding ways around it. And so what happened when he cut this tax rate is he brought all this business back to the legal side of the argument, and he actually raised revenue by cutting taxes.
Right.
And so you can have productive ways of lowering taxes and building your economy to offset these costs. And so that's kind of the approach I want to take.
Well, you bring up a really good point. So it's easy for somebody like me to say to look at you and say you're in the legislature. You need to eliminate taxes, right? Why could we not go back to a more simple version of taxes? In reality, I get it. We got to pay taxes. Why don't we do a percentage across the board?
Absolutely.
That would take away all of these incentives and these abatements? If every corporation, every small business, every citizen would say pay 10% of a tax rate, why can we not go to a system like that that's free and fair?
Exactly, and that's what I call a unified tax code. I push it in Catoosa County all the time based on property taxes.
Right.
We have Catoosa County is a perfect example. We have 42 tax exemptions just on the education side of property taxes.
That's insane to me.
Some of them are only 2 to 3 people getting them. And it's just
that's
because
insane.
they don't know about them. There are different codes, there are different ways of doing it, and I call it a Christmas tree. The reason why all this happens over the period of 30 years, you get, this is a really good idea. I want to give a tax exemption to veterans. So you hang your little ball on the Christmas tree. And then 30 years later, everybody's hung their ball on the Christmas tree, and it weighs it down. It's, and so that's kind of how we've gotten here.
Yeah, I
Now
agree.
we kind of have to come back and say, whoa.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask first, what taxes do you want to eliminate? Which ones are unproductive? Which ones hurt the constituents the most? And so I'm still and big supporter of getting rid of the income tax, but I found a tax I hate more, and that's property taxes.
Yes.
Property taxes, you have risk of losing your home.
Yes.
You have it's unproductive completely. The more you build on the home, the more you're taxed.
Agreed.
So it's unproductive. It doesn't help the economy. It hurts your constituents, and I think that's the most unproductive tax we have.
Right.
So going into House Bill 581, and why I'm a primary drafter of it, is because I'm a big believer in consumption tax.
Right.
It's a tax of choice. Basically, you're going and needing to spend this money, you're choosing to spend the money on one of, and say, well.
Okay, so we're entering into this this latest legislation.
Yes.
So.
And that's what I'm trying to mold this
Yes.
into.
Let's go into that.
And so House Bill 581 came about dealing with all these problems. Is in Catoosa County we've had massive property tax growth, massive tax growth because our local governments have used assessments. They have raised taxes themselves, and the school system has raised appraisals and raised taxes themselves. So you have, and because they always love to dodge around the question. Well, it's the state, it's us, it's this, it's the assessments, it's all of them.
It's all of them. Let's not. It's a finger pointing carousel.
Exactly.
This system has been designed for somebody to say it's not me, it's this person.
You're exactly
and
right.
And that person blames it to that person, and that has got to stop.
No, you're exactly right. We need, I'm a big believer in checks and balances.
Yes.
We need checks and balances, but at the same time, this system has allowed us, you're exactly right, to create this carousel of, well, it's also the state. It is a state. I'm a state representative. I'm telling you, a third of it is the state.
Yes.
A third of it is your school system, and a third of it is the county.
Right.
Or cities, or however you want to phrase
Amen.
it. And so, yeah, absolutely. The finger point needs to stop, and we need to say, yes, the assessed values rose so quickly because of these fundamental issues. And they're not willing to say that. They're not willing to say
No.
And so in Catoosa County alone, we saw our assessments jump year after year. First, it stayed still. So I love, again, I'm a fiscal nerd. I love numbers, and I'm known as the spreadsheet guy at the Capitol.
Well, that's what we need.
And so I love compound growth. And the reason why I'm talking about compound growth is when you have growth at property taxes of 2 to 3% a year, that's normal. But then then inflation jumped because the Biden administration put so much money into the economy, and it didn't. So everybody's like, well, it's a bubble for housing prices. No, it's not that the house is worth more. It's that the dollar is worth less.
Yes.
And that is a very hard concept. I'm not going to really go into it, but that's the
I
that's the
understand.
fundamental problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so over 3% every year. Then the next year, the inflation started to rise massively. You know, the Fed say 7%. It was really probably about 20%. And you saw that in your asset growth. And your houses went up 22%. Well, in Catoosa County, they appraised it for 3%. So you had this massive growth start opening up. The next year, they hit you with another 20% increase because it did raise 20% because inflation again. And they did a 20% jump. But that's not filling the previous year's hole. And so you had this hole just lingering. And that's where you get tax hit after tax hit after tax hit to where people just can't stomach 20%, 40%, 60% now. And
Well, and then it's what it's done too is awaken that giant beast, right?
Exactly.
So many people that don't want to get involved, all of a sudden woke up to this, and they're ready to just burn the place down. And it's like, hang on, fellas, we need to look at this from all sides here.
Exactly, and that's where I kind of came into this picture where I was just elected. I'm like, we have all these problems. This is how I ran it. I said, I fundamentally believe this. I don't want to change Catoosa County. I want my kids to grow up in the same Catoosa County I grew up in.
Sure.
But that requires us to change and to evolve because we have things that are being taught to us that are massively unhealthy. We have a massive property tax hole and all this revenue being excessed out because of massive spending problems. We have all of these problems lined up to where we have to start addressing these problems and changing the way we're doing the current business because we failed for the last 5 to 10 years. And so I came to the county and I was like, I don't believe in property taxes. I think we need to move towards a sales tax approach. The problem is there's no real state law that kind of enables this. All our state law sales taxes were built like crutches. They were built for 1 year interims they were built for like 5-year interims to build up.
I think we have a renewal coming here in Walker County as well.
SPLOST. So. It wasn't built for that. It wasn't built for a five-year rotation. It was built for, we see that we're growing more than our tax base. We need to make sure we fill this hole so that it doesn't hurt us long term. And we give it one time and then we take it away. Right. It was meant for a one-time problem.
Wait a minute, you said we take it away.
No, I said we're supposed to take it away.
Supposed to take it away, right?
Yes, and we never do.
It ends up being on there, and then somebody goes, 30 years.
Exactly. And it's ridiculous. That's not how these taxes were built. Right. And then they're like, well, we don't actually like this tax because it leaves out these things and it doesn't fit how we need. Yes, it wasn't designed to do what we're using it for.
Exactly. And they're trying to find ways to make it. Yes.
Exactly. So what I wanted to do, and we also had same thing with just like Catoosa County's exemption code in the state. We had all these different sales taxes, but none of these sales taxes fit the mold that we needed it to fit. And so you had like 30 sales taxes alone on state code that was meant for one county each.
That's ridiculous.
Exactly. So I went to Shaw Blackman. He's chairman of Ways and Means, and I sat down and he completely agreed. We had a very good conversation. I went to the county, to local county, and said, I think we can actually get something done. I talked to the Association for County Commissioners, and all of them was like, yeah, we need some tool to be able to offset these property taxes. And so that's really where this bill kind of started, is we want a 1% sales tax just to offset property taxes. And unfortunately, nothing's that simple and easy at the Gold Dome.
Yeah, it's very complex.
And so and that was the beginning of last term. And so within about 3 months, this just took off and really became law. And so we had to compromise with a lot of different groups. We had to compromise with the Senate.
Getting up to the exemption, right?
Yeah, we're getting to
this is
House Bill 581 looks like.
Let me try before we go into it. So here's a lot of the confusion. And we did a show on this. Blake Ellsbury laid this out. I know people down in South Georgia who deal with far different things that we deal with that absolutely could not vote for this. And they gave me some insight, as to why. So this exemption that voted, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but HB 581 was on the books, but it needed this exemption to pass, which was what passed to make this law, right?
Yes. And that's where the process of how it came about kind of comes in question. So we were aimed as a House towards sales tax approach versus property tax approach. The Senate wanted to do property exemptions.
Okay.
And wanted some type of this floating homestead exemption. What a floating homestead exemption is it protects your home value going up so quickly like we've seen in those last 2 years. and capping it at the rate of inflation, protecting homeowners. So that was their approach, but they're not legally allowed to drop bills on taxes.
Okay.
That's the constitutional authority of the House, and so they started sticking it on everything,
Okay.
and finally, so we passed our bill clean through the House side. Then the Senate was like, "No, we want these exemptions," and so for about a month it stalled.
Okay.
Because they wanted these exemptions, we wanted this sales tax approach, and finally we came out to this conglomeration of these two bills mashed together. And so their real focus was, again, this tax exemption that was statewide. They said that the bill does state that you have to have this exemption to be able to have what's called a flexible local option sales tax.
Okay.
It's a 1% sales tax specifically to offset property taxes. That's all that revenue can go for. And so
that would bring up you buying something would bring up your sales tax
1%.
1%,
And then it offsets it directly goes to offsetting your property taxes.
Okay.
Now, some counties absolutely shouldn't do it because some counties, like Catoosa County, we're right on the interstate. We have great retail space. We have a lot of strong commercial spending. And so our dollar-to-dollar return is like for every $2 we're bringing on sales tax, it's $1 in property taxes.
Okay.
And so it massively cuts taxes on the county and city side for my constituents. So for $250 a year in sales tax, they're getting a $600 property tax exemption.
Okay.
Walker County, it's not the same. It's about $1 for $1.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to measure each county up to how that 1% sales tax would affect that one county. And I'm not saying every county should do it.
Right, but give me an example of a county. So we know that your county, Catoosa County, did not opt out.
Yes.
Which to me, from what I understand, is a good thing.
Yes,
We don't want the school system opting out.
So going to the exemption side of it. So you have to have an exemption to be able to even talk about a 1% sales tax.
Okay.
And that's just on the county and city side. So we're just talking about city and county property taxes.
Okay.
And then there's, of course, the school system. So two hands
Right.
that
Separate millage rates, yes, exactly.
separate structures, and we'll get into those in a minute. But so first, yes, you have to do your exemption. So to even have the authority to do a statewide exemption, we had to put on a referendum.
Okay.
And that's why everybody had to vote for it. Just to allow this statewide exemption, we wanted it a full referendum across the state. Now, some counties already have stronger exemptions
Okay.
than what's in House Bill 581.
Right.
And so that's why we allowed this opt-out to basically say, well, if you have a better one, or if on top of that, if it doesn't benefit
Right.
parts of South Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, you shouldn't. Then that's up. But that's if the people don't want it, and that's if
Right.
there's other steps there, and they have to make sure that they're saying it's a tax increase
Mm-hmm.
because it is. What it does is this tax exemption that is now on the books for Catoosa County. Almost every entity is going to do it. We don't know about one of the cities yet, but they haven't put it on their agenda. So we're hoping that because they don't have to do anything now. And the people have voted in. It's on the books. Every county or cities now just have to opt out of it. Okay. So right now you're getting it. It's how your entities decide to do with it.
Right. Okay.
And so that's a very important. Right now you're getting it. But your school system and your
Right.
your
In
county,
other words,
your cities,
it's in effect unless they pull the effect.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
And so that's where then they have to list it just like a tax increase. It's 3 hearings. They have to explain why they need this tax revenue and why I don't think it's
Right.
healthy for them. And this is why I think it's healthy. I'm a fiscal conservative. What that means is I believe in in shrinking government. Worst case scenario, you want to keep government the same and keep and keeping it functioning at the levels that you have it. And so that is what this bill does. It provides a homeowner protection to do just that.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation grows at roughly 3 to 7% a year right now, and right now our appraisals are going up 22. 40%.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
They're massive, and so every year you're going to get this 10 to 15% tax exemption from here on out if inflation keeps up this way.
Mm-hmm.
If the feds keep spending the money they're spending, which we
Right.
do believe, they're probably going to do. And so, unless this Doge committee can truly, which I hopefully
They're going to have a lot of trouble if they don't stop.
Yes.
Especially after Musk and all of his tweets. They're going to have a big problem if they don't.
Absolutely, and I look forward. I love the there's memes going around about like the Ron Swanson.
Yes,
and I love that. It's so true. I'm over here, cut it.
100%.
And we need to on the federal level. We need to on 15% of the state budget. But that being said, is localities have the same problem. They've bloated their staff. They've bloated in different ways that
big
legally
time.
they're not supposed. That they
And
have.
I want to interject one thing while we're on this. So, you know, all of these inflationary rise, everything's sort of connected, right? But I see nothing but new growth coming in, right? I see new subdivisions, new restaurants, new buildings being built. Do they even take that into effect? Because is that not more tax revenue
That's
coming
more
in on
tax-
top of it?
It depends on the entity. Like Chickamauga doesn't have a property
Right.
tax, so they can build stuff and it doesn't affect them at all.
Right.
And so it just depends on how your county or
You know, you would think if the more growth coming in would even offset. So let's say Catoosa County went up 30% on their millage rate. You would think that some of that property tax would offset the new growth coming
unfortunately,
in.
yes and no. So a lot of it, all these exemptions kind of bloated to where it caps those growth.
Yeah.
And so you have to, and that's one thing we don't do really well as county entities, as state entities. We don't measure how all this growth and how all these different tax codes and systems align with each other to build this growth. Right now it's oppressing, and there is ways that you can make the tax system benefit everybody.
Sure.
And we're a long way from that, and it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of calculation, and a lot of tweaking. And we're not even to the point where we can tweak it. Right now we can slash.
Right.
And so you were at, I don't want to change subjects, but real quick, you talked about why do we have such a big surplus? Mm-hmm. We have such a big surplus because, one, we are growing so quickly as a state. Two, inflation has caused such a bloating of money to enter the system that wages on the state level have not gone up. That's why police officers are not getting paid what they should be getting paid based on national averages. You have state salaries and I'm not for new state positions, but I do believe that if we think that position is necessary, we need to pay you properly.
Right.
And there's a balance there, and unfortunately we don't really hit that balance a lot of times.
I agree. I do agree with that.
And I do think there's a lot of positions we can cut. I see it all across the board.
Sure.
I'm not against that. I'm just simply saying, if we say we need that state trooper, we need to pay that state trooper properly, and we need to make sure they have the proper retirement, and we funded that retirement that we promised them.
Right.
Not that we need to promise more retirement, it's that we need to promise you what you got.
Right.
And we fail that a lot of times as state because we are not shoring up the structures underneath.
Well, perfect example with Georgia Tax Court. The selling point was this was to getting it away from the tribunal of Fulton County. Yet, and I talked to legislators and I've talked to people about this, and they don't have a lot of information on it because it was just kind of, this is a thumbs up, this is an easy one. But when you get down to the meat and potatoes of this thing,
Well, it's exactly. It's another bureaucratic layer.
yeah, you're actually creating a whole nother court system and paying more salaries and paying more staff, and this is a whole nother arm.
And
I'm like, this is great. Why are we not talking about eliminating taxes? None of these things eliminate, right?
Exactly. And you're exactly right. We don't talk about eliminating taxes because we have no plan to eliminate taxes. We lower tax and we barely tweak them, but you're right. We do have a very big surplus that we can absolutely start tweaking and start asking questions. Something that I do plan on introducing this legislative session, and I've talked to leadership on, is I want to. Why can't we not do what Trump is recommending federally, statewide? No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security.
Absolutely.
And so,
or better yet, why could we not come up with like a real system, like a 10-10-10 system?
absolutely.
You know?
We have a flat budget now, but the problem is, you're right. There's so many holes in this.
Yes.
In this shred.
What creates complexity, and then complexity leads to loopholes, and then it leads to who knows
exactly
what,
right.
when, where. You know, it wasn't even. This is my bad for not knowing this, right? But not being a political person, I didn't know there was two separate millage rates. We never knew this until the percentages went up so high in such short amount of time that everybody comes out slamming their fist on the table like, what are you guys doing?
Exactly.
It's been this way. This is business as usual. We've got to work on changing
No,
it.
you're exactly right. And like I was saying in the beginning of the show, that's the whole problem. Is this has been business as usual for decades.
Yes.
Especially in North Georgia. and we have to change it to keep what we have.
I agree.
We have to start lowering taxes. We have to start finding different solutions out of this problem, and that's where you're never going to get them to cut everything you want them to cut.
I get it.
And I always like to do what I do with business owners. It's not my responsibility is to get you as healthy as you can, but it's not my responsibility to make that decision for you.
I got you.
And the same thing with the counties and the school system. Catoosa County raised their taxes 40% this year, just as a school system.
Just on the side of the school.
Just
system.
on the side of the school
Which
system.
directly affected property owners, going back to originally what you said. The ones that are struggling right now due to this inflationary process of losing land over this, and yet they're being asked or being told, all right, to prop up the school system.
Exactly.
And we went through years and years of, are you attacking the children, right?
Exactly.
That narrative is completely fallen now. You're not convincing anybody that we're going against the children. This has gone too
Absolutely.
far.
And I don't have anything against the teachers or the students.
No.
But I have everything about how we are running this administration.
Agreed.
Because if you have to ask for a 40% tax increase, there's something wrong.
Exactly.
And
Especially if you look at the books.
And all I'm asking for is us to come to the table and say, there's something wrong.
Yes.
What is it? And to even get that discussion, you are shut down, you are shunned, you are cut off. And
well, we've already seen the ramifications of, and I know at least two counties, Whitfield and Catoosa, that once the finger pointing was done, they were like, look, they're saying they're going to arrest us. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's the final wall, is the state can look and say, we're going to arrest you if you don't. I mean, that's insane to me. What kind of situation we have there? Is this the real system we got going on? Like, it's like almost like they took a blank piece of paper with a number on it, handed it to 159 counties, and said, "Get this or else."
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it looks like.
And that's not how it works at all. I mean, that's how the school system tells you it works.
Yeah,
they're
right.
like, well, we have to give this money to the state. They give no money to the state at all. What happens is it's called I don't really want to get into it because it's so convoluted.
I understand.
And I'm not saying I agree with it. I think it's a very outdated system. But it's just how it is, and it's been that way, like we were saying, 30 years. All of these problems are just metastasizing at the same time. And going into most of these lists, that's the fundamental problem, is it's been this way for 20 years. But
Right,
it's
this whole
metastasizing
equalization
now.
process is kind of bogus. I mean, we're gonna have to work on this.
And it's across the board. So with every issue, it's with healthcare.
Yes.
It's with election systems. It's with everything we have. It's all coming together now to this perfect storm. And I always like to use the joke, but it's so true, of every problem that I get kind of pushed into. It's kind of like looking at an old car. You put up the hood and it's just terrible underneath. And you just close the hood slowly.
Right.
And that's unfortunately kind of where we're at on so many different things, that we do need constituents to wake up and say, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, agreed.
Because that's where it's going to stop. They only fear one thing, and that's re-election.
I understand.
And that's what it will come down to, is people waking up, going and looking at these problems themselves, coming up with your own opinion, and saying, this is just unacceptable to me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the numbers. My father started looking at the numbers about a week ago, completely out of the blue. And he comes to me, he's like, Mitchell, this is just ridiculous. I'm like, I've been trying to tell you that for 2 years. And look at the numbers. It's just so blatantly obvious that when a system can't provide three different can't provide data on they provide data on three sources, and each of those sources differently aligned and say different things, and then they're like, well, it's misinformation. No, this is what you gave me.
Exactly. Well,
And
I want you to remind all of your fellow representatives that taxes are a big, huge deal.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is not just coming from me, but nobody is buying all these new tax incentives. They're wanting to know why we're not looking at eliminating taxes.
No, you're exactly right.
And I don't think I'd ever be against paying taxes, right? But when you brought up Boston Tea Party, right? This is way beyond the Boston Tea Party, and it's not. We're not blaming you guys or the state. This is a country issue where things have gotten out of control. I think hopefully moving in 2025. We're going to have the proper legislative process in D.C. to be able to open up doors where people can comfortably talk about this, as you are right now.
And you're exactly right, and that's what we need, because our biggest national security threat isn't China, isn't Russia. It's our national debt, because
right.
if we can't spend money when we need to in a war,
That's right.
then people always said purse wins wars, and our purse is out. We every dollar we spend now is inflated, and
Our currency is the fiat system is a joke, and we're going to have to rein this back in.
Exactly,
So,
and that's the fundamental problem. Is you're never going to fix this inflation problem until you rein in the federal.
That's
government.
right.
And you're never going to rein in your state, the power of the government, until you start saying this is out of hand. I can't
Right.
afford this. When my constituents are coming to me begging me for property tax relief, and I'm sorry, I don't have any authority when it comes to property tax millage rates on school systems. I don't want that power. But that being said, it's just getting to that bad. Every hand is squeezing for more.
That's right.
And at some point, you're exactly right. We have to say, this is ridiculous. We have to stop, and we have to start pushing back this wheel.
That's right.
And we have a Republican majority. This is a completely winning issue.
That's right.
And
Well,
I don't know why we don't move on it.
I don't either. I mean, Republicans, a lot of the grassroots that I know of, they're ready to just they're ready to stop voting for not vote for Democrats, but they're ready to guard their vote in the system because they're tired of being lied to. They're tired of being placated.
Look, I've been a Republican since birth, but you have to, because there are your representatives and there are legislators that don't care, that are there for the same old.
I do know that, and boy, oh boy, are they going to have a tough time getting reelected. But
and then that's the fundamental thing is it's very hard to be incumbents, and you have to rally, you have to keep up the fight, because the fight doesn't end with Trump getting elected. That's just beginning.
No,
you now just have started tipping the scales to where you can actually affect change.
Exactly.
And the fundamental change happens at your county. It happens in your school system, and that because they're teaching your kids, and those kids are coming out with those beliefs.
That's right. That's right.
And those so many and that voting block, and there's that new voting block, and now can support their ideas. And so you have to think of this as a long-term battle, to where every year, every day, look at what they're doing. I mean, my one's like, we just don't have time to do this every day.
Right.
That's why we have. I'm like, I get that.
Right.
But I promise you, they're not doing it.
I agree.
And so that's what it comes down to, is someone has to do it. And unfortunately, it falls onto our shoulders now.
That's right.
And when it, John Adams always said, I study philosophy, I study military because I hope my children can study art and music. We have to study finances so that our kids can study music and art and appreciate the greater things in life.
Well, I'm going to tell you, we're going to cut off taxes here now, but everything you've said is pretty dynamite to me, and I hope that more legislators are talking your same language coming into 25, because people like me and others are the ones pushing this, because we get it brought to us from the people.
The problem is it's the doing. It's not the talking.
Well, exactly.
We're politicians. We're very good at talking, but the action
to.
is the problem, and we're getting to that point that our nation demands action.
Dang right, and we've got an open door in about 8 days?
Yep.
An open door
and
to
not
do
action
this.
to do more, action to do less. And that's
Agreed. All right, so I've got some things on. We've covered the tax exemption, and like I said, I'm on the fence with the whole process, but I'm being told from people that this exemption is good, and I think we need to get the word out for people to utilize this on every level.
It doesn't save you money immediately, but it caps that
capping
growth.
from the inflation.
And that's what we're trying to do, is cap this government growth.
Right. Okay. All right. And we'll continue. We will continue to be talking about this. I know counties now are bringing it up. I want to talk a little bit about Dominion voting systems. Let's move into election integrity. So I'm not here to ask you what your opinions are of 2020, any of that. We're sticking straight to what we know. In the last 4 years, we've had a huge election integrity movement in this state.
Absolutely.
Our election board, we've seen some real good wins with the election board. We've had a lot of lawsuits that have been brought forth. I don't know if you've kept up with the Totenberg case, but a very, very weak ruling kind of came out from the Totenberg trial that was almost shameful. We've watched these political prosecution cases go through over the president and the RICO case, all this. What are your thoughts on Dominion voting systems first? And, let's just say, tell me what you think. We've had 4 years of integrity. We've seen court cases on how how little security we have with these systems. We just had to use them yet again. We're under contract in Georgia. So what do you think about Dominion?
Well, I'm the one legislator that did write a bill that says we need to study Dominion machines.
Okay.
We fundamentally have to study these machines because so I kind of got into the election integrity issue about a year and a half ago. I do fundamentally believe we had problems in our election system. Not in Catoosa County, not probably in Walker, but
Right, we're
talking about the Fulton County and those areas that just there's clearly problems, but going into it, we now need to address them. I'm a state legislature. We need to address them. So that being said, when it came to so about a year and a half ago, we started getting more hints, and all this stuff really started to come to fruition. And I specifically started really diving into it. I was like, okay, let's just go down to the very basics, and I'll work with my elections team in Catoosa County, with the GOP in Catoosa County, and with all these different sides, and I was just talking to them about like, what can tell me, what's your opinion, and just walking through it. And so for about 6 months, I was just data gathering. That's what I love to do. Just before I form an opinion, let's just see what the facts are on the ground. And the facts are, there's a contract on the board that we cannot audit security-wise these machines.
Right, because they are proprietary machines. Part of the contract was written up that it would be done proprietary. I know all about that because of where I work in, which is insane to me in the first place.
Exactly.
But go ahead.
I mean, how can we tell you it's secure if we cannot test it for security?
100%.
And so that is that's the tip of the tip of the arch. And then you have problem after problem again, kind of going back to that old car hood situation where we can't tell you that no election system is 100% secure. Mm-hmm. We can try to, it's human based, it's human, incepted. Right. Of course it's not going to be pure. But that being said, is we can get as close to securing your vote as possible. But we are not near that when we can't test these machines for security parameters. And then you have to get into also, like we were talking about a little bit, corporate control, which is you have 2 or 3 companies that control the election machine market. Mm-hmm. And there's wonderful documentaries on this show that these machines they're old, they
Kill Chain. It's a great documentary.
Exactly. He had no bias. He was a Finnish
no,
security agent.
that came out before Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's liberal based because they were worried that Kemp stole it, that they stole it for Kemp. Mm-hmm. And so when both sides disagree, feel like their election is in some way fraudulent, mm-hmm. they're going to act. And that's when republic falls. Right. Oh, big time. Because they don't believe their vote, so they're mm-hmm. going to take up arms, and it cascades from there. Right. And that's something that I have 3 little girls. I want to guard myself, my family, my constituents from those possibilities. So I took election integrity very seriously going into this last election, especially with us knowing Georgia's a swing state. We want to protect and make sure I don't care how I'm a Republican. I want the state to go red, but the problem is I want the people to be represented. Again,
and I don't think I have a lot of the narrative is that, but I don't think I've not met one person in the grassroots or anybody who's working on election integrity who cares about who gets elected. Okay.
Exactly.
It was never my intention, and I kind of fumbled into this as well. Because I've always, and I'm not afraid to say it, I've never thought that voting mattered that much, over the years, especially the more electronic it gets. But I don't care who wins. I want the people's vote to decide that. So all we're asking for is transparency.
Exactly.
We don't have it.
Exactly. And so that is where we really started trying to crack down and let's build a better, at least let's build what we have. We're not going to get rid of the contract. It's just not feasible.
All right, let's talk about that. Why? Why or do you know the answer to that?
Oh, I'll just simply say you won't get the votes. The votes in the House and the Senate, you just will not get. Trust me, I want us
so
to
it comes down to a vote.
It just comes down
what
to
if the governor, if the governor and the Secretary of State, they're obviously signed this contract. What if they just came out and said, no deal? Do you know the answer? What would happen to that governor? Would they be forced to pay a fine or what?
I don't know. I don't know what the terms are for breaking the contract. Yeah. I can't get the contract. I've been asking for this contract
really?
for a year and a half.
You can't get the contract? Wow.
And so, and that's what I'm saying. I want to see the contract. Uh-huh. Let's see what this problem is here. Because but that's the problem. The governor's not going to do it. The Secretary of State's not going to
No.
do it. We don't have the people in these mechanisms
Right.
to be able to say we need.
Well,
these.
I mean, I thank you for admitting that. You're absolutely right.
And so that's the problem is we don't have people that are I mean, I can't even get a study committee on addressing this issue.
Wow. I hope everybody out there, state legislator can't get the contract. He can't get a study on these things. So yes, go ahead.
And that's the problem is so that was a very big problem coming. So when I always joke, I need to start saying things at the GOP because every time I say something at the GOP, the next day something changes to where I actually get something accomplished. A year ago, right before session, I went to GOP and they go, and I've talked with leadership about some of these changes of specifically the QR code. The QR code is killing us because it gives everything wrong with how people vote, how people feel about voting, and it builds up this animosity.
Well, I mean, it's proven in a court of law to be illegal. It's not even supposed to work like that.
Exactly, and so you have all this animosity around just this one specific item, and so I went to leadership and I said, we need to do this, and they're like, yeah, this ain't gonna happen. And I go, okay, and I'm like, well, what can we do to start this process? And they're like, and they gave me the wrong runaround, right? Well, go see that.
Sure.
And then I go to GOP. They asked me, Mitchell, can we get rid of car workers? I'm like, I just don't see it happening. The next day, the speaker comes out saying he's for getting rid of QR codes.
Right.
And everybody wanted to sign my bill, so I had like 50 signatures the next day.
And part of that was the grassroots taking these actions to court, the court of law, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt they went against the Constitution. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And so that's what it takes is pressure on these people to get something done. And so this last change in the election law was absolutely something that we fundamentally needed. It was a step. And I wish we could and would go further. I don't think that's really on the cards right now for our legislative leadership to do.
I want you to know from the people that the election integrity is not going anywhere. They're focusing.
You can go to Legis. It's that's the House Legis.com. It's the House website and the Senate website.
Yeah.
And you can look at every bill every House member and Senate member put up. And
What
you can
is it?
see. I don't. It's been a while.
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me so we can look at it.
And
right?
you can see
because
everything.
this is part of the new, no business as usual, right?
Exactly.
As us podcasters, and that's what I was going to get to, highlighting the things we need to be looking out for, the things that we can get our voices out. We're using X, we're using Facebook, all these there's going to be a lot of people down at the Capitol
And watch your
tomorrow.
legislators as they present bills because it'll tell you exactly how they feel about a lot of things.
Yes.
I use it to tell my constituents exactly how I feel about things.
Right.
I draft the bill up. I mean, I know most of them won't probably go anywhere. I have a few pieces that I absolutely try to push through.
Right.
Some pieces are just so you know that I fundamentally will put a bill out there on the floor and say, this is wrong, we need to fix
That's
it.
what we need, man.
And so some people do that, a lot of people don't.
I know. There's a lot of people who don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
That's going to change big time.
And so then that's what it takes is our constituents getting involved. That's what's going to change Atlanta. It's what's going to change DC. It's what's going to change your local and school system.
So I'm gonna recap right now. So fundamentally, you're on the same page about Dominion. We really want it gone. You don't see it being possible at this time with the current contract in place, but if legislation came across that said we can get out of this contract and leave Dominion and we'll come up with another system.
I think if we had a great committee chair and a study committee on it, I think we could show exactly the problems that we're talking about today.
Okay. Would you be willing to talk to people in the grassroots about getting that committee running off the ground in 25?
Absolutely. I'm all for the committee.
That's wonderful. Well, then I'm going to send some people your way because knowing that we have legislators that are willing to do this, because I can tell you firsthand, I went to the Capitol a year ago. We went to the Capitol and I joined in with Georgians for Truth and Paper Please. And, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just down there to document. And so many legislators that we talked to about these situations, they claim they had no idea about any of this stuff. And I know that within the last year, a lot of people have gotten up to speed. So I commend you for just being willing to reach out to these people. We need it. So
that's my job.
I hope everybody that's out there watching is seeing this. That Mitchell Horner is willing to sit down with grassroots and talk about ways that we can move forward and getting rid of dominion, right, and getting something that the people can believe in. So that's wonderful, man.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Gun legislation. So the reason I put this down, obviously, I'm a huge Second Amendment supporter. I know that our Speaker of the House, John Burns, I've read the article where he plans to reintroduce some of these gun legislation laws, like primarily about safes and putting your weapons unloaded in safes and all this stuff. Just more of these red flag laws that keep kind of coming up and up and up. So give me your bird's eye view. What are we looking at going into session? Obviously, we're looking at what are our Republicans going to do. We know that if a Democrat was in charge, they just want to ban everything.
Yes.
So tell me what you're seeing, what we need to look for.
Absolutely. So you're exactly right. Unfortunately, I'm a big believer in the 2A movement. I think the Constitution is very clear. Every time I hear even rumors of a gun bill, I call Ray up and I call Ken Cochran up. He's a great friend of mine. And I'm like, what do we need to do? And we do have very good 2A movements in our state that's able to defend from these terrible choices that our leadership does. That being said, I'm one of the few Republicans that voted against that firearm tax credit. I mean, it was literally a Democratic bill to where they brought it to the House floor.
And they dressed it up with a tax credit to say, hey, go out and buy a gun safe, and we'll give you a nice little tax credit, but you got to keep your guns locked up in your safe home. If I have to worry about authorities coming up into my home to see whether a gun in my home is locked up or not, there's problems way beyond this.
Gun registry.
Exactly.
And so that's why we voted against the bill. They tried to put a tagline into it. No records should be kept. I'm like, how are you not going to keep records knowing that this person received a tax credit 35 years ago?
Exactly.
I mean, and again, my biggest fear is a Democrat taking Georgia as a governorship, as anything, because there's so much things that will immediately change overnight.
I agree.
And you see that California, you see that in Washington, how quickly the mood changes in a state, business-wise, legal-wise, and even enforcement of law enforcement policies wise. And so that is what we're trying to guard against. I mean, my first year into session, I was always fighting with them about if a Democrat took over and had the authority you have and is asking for, they can do terrible damage to the people I represent and to the rest of the state of Georgia.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, as Republicans, we don't think that way. We are like, well, we could use this to fight them. I'm like, well, if we're setting a precedent legally and physically to where if we allow even discussion of this, you're saying there's enough Republican moderates now to push it through and to garner that vote. Yeah. And so that's the problem is you're giving these signals to the Democrats that maybe some of these baseline ideas that our people
you know as well as I do, Mitch. If you move even an inch, not only do you never get that inch back, okay, but you open up more and more doorways to move it a foot, all right? And we can see this now. I don't understand how we can have so-called constitutional Republicans that don't understand this, unless it's something nefarious, unless somebody's promised them a kickback or something. How can you do this? And how can you run with the narrative of
because
every
they get
tragedy?
Told that it's fine, and they get told that, and that's the problem.
They're clueless.
I mean, again, big fan of William Pitt. His favorite line was "Necessity is the father of all evil," and it's true.
It burns
because it comes to where you do have a tragedy occur, and they go, well, now we need gun legislation.
Right. Never let a good tragedy go to waste. Right?
and that's why you're seeing all this school safety stuff start coming around the corner now.
Yes.
Is because we do have fundamental mental health issues as a country, as a state. And
we
could say that that's because of churches, that's because of everything.
Sure.
Of all the moral conscience. Exactly. There's so many different things that coalesce into this mental problem. And is boiling over into rage, into murder, into everything else that these mental problems naturally go into. And so with more portion of the population going up in this way, you're not addressing these issues. You're doing it if you do address these issues, you're doing it in a exactly opposite way of how you should do it.
Right.
And so you're creating more issues, and the state's getting involved, and so
you're throwing all these issues right into one pot, which is guns. I've never watched a gun get up and shoot somebody. It's a people issue, and it always has been. It always will be. But it's almost as if like the guns are just a blanket blame that everybody can go to. We all know history. You look at the Cultural Revolution. You look at Nazi Germany. This is the way. This is the path they go down: controlling food, controlling guns. The Second Amendment should not be touched whatsoever.
Absolutely, and that's why it's in our Constitution.
That's right.
And so that's the problem is people don't think like that anymore. Unfortunately,
I know
it's when it
this.
comes to a lot of leadership, and they do not understand the precedents that they're setting for the other side. And that's something that really does concern me. Is we probably will not have the votes on the House side to stop these bills. So what we're seeing is red flag laws because they're going to do everything they can to garner that if you vote against this, you're voting against, you're voting against the children, you're voting for another tragedy.
Right.
I'm not voting. I want us to do everything we can to stop another tragedy.
Right.
Absolutely. That's through law enforcement. That's through getting more community involvement involved in these kids.
Well, I mean, even having you can have discussion with schools. There's non-lethal ways to arm teachers in school that can prevent these sort of things. They
and
make
those are
all
already
of
on the
these.
books.
Yeah.
All you need is the superintendent to agree to.
All
it.
you need is a super. Ray, did you hear that, Ray?
Local
All you need is a superintendent and a few other people
and,
to agree.
the local school board.
Wow. Okay. So, folks out there watching, I'm telling you, you're going to have these are things that's coming up in 2025 that we're not fighting Democrats on or about. This is Republicans that we're going to have to be looking at this.
And so get involved with your representative because they are going to be hearing very steadily from their leadership.
Oh, if they thought we were bad last year, man. Oh, Lord.
And that's what I'm like.
You have no
how do
idea.
you-
I can't hold some of these people back. I'm telling you.
And that's what I'm trying to say is I can't stress enough. The right wing came out in droves in Northwest Georgia, Northeast Georgia.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, we're still talking about this. Like it's just insanity
it's
to me.
funny you mention that because I can't remember. Pretty much in November, around November, I think it was after the 5th. It was pretty clear that Donald Trump was becoming president. And the story again, I can pull it up if I need to, folks. But it was just I think local Georgia news was talking about John Burns' agenda next, legislative session was all about, well, they didn't call them red flag laws, but they're like, we're going to bring up this gun discussion again. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, are you freaking kidding me?
Right after the election, I spoke to leadership. I said, if you want these people to come back and vote for you, you have to give them something.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, look, and Mitchell, there's no secret. I mean, and people now know the power of their vote.
Exactly.
All right, and I want to make it clear, and I want you to go to Atlanta with this. Is that people are willing to sacrifice their vote. They're no longer willing to vote on party lines anymore or hold their nose. Like we've done that for the last few
Absolutely.
years. And I'm just being honest. Like,
No, and that's what we need.
If I can't get good Republican leadership, right? If I can't get my legislators to do anything, if all they're doing is just going through the motions, I will abstain my vote from that person.
Exactly.
It doesn't
And
mean
that's
I'm
the
going to
only
vote for
thing they
Democrat,
understand.
but if let the tides turn where they may, because the time of holding your nose is over with.
Exactly.
We're never going to get what we want, right? We can't get 100%. We can't expect you to go up there and be 1,000%. What we can do though is we can leverage our vote for that, and Republicans had better wake up.
Absolutely.
They have the doorways have been opened.
I mean, and that's what I'm trying to say is we have 4, 6, 8 years before we are looking down the barrel.
That's right.
Of a Democrat government.
Right.
And that's going to radically change the state. And that's my biggest fear. And they're doing everything they can to basically allow this.
Allow it. Yes.
Because they know not what they do. I always love saying, people are like, watch. It has to. It has to be a conspiracy. It has to. And I'm like, no, it's just literally the first class on the Titanic. They're still dining, and we hit the iceberg.
That's right.
It's 10 years ago.
That is correct.
And it's just that kind of mentality. And we have to start, just like you have to with the school board, and it starts locally. It fundamentally does, and that's why I'm not. You have to start going to these meetings.
Well,
you have to start saying, "What's
I
the
agree.
problem?"
I agree.
and you have to go to the committee hearings and say, "I want to speak."
You have to go
to the state house,
school board, commission meetings, planning. We got a huge joint development issues going on in the state. We've got to get people involved because the higher up you go in different areas, we find that all these positions are appointed. They're not even elected, and nobody even knows who's in these positions, right? And we don't have a clue what they're doing, and that's the way they want to keep it. And it's just not going to stay that way.
And they're not used to this set
No.
of new grassroots.
That's it. That's why I tell people you cannot come up the steps with a pitchfork yelling and screaming, right?
Because they're in a whole different world.
Yes.
It's a first class.
It's business as usual to them.
Exactly. And
They're looking at you like, what am I doing wrong? We've been doing the same thing for the last 20 years.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so the people are like, well, it's just, that's the problem.
Yes.
It's this mindset that you're trying to slowly get them out of, massage them out of.
Yes.
And it is a ridiculous mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, you just,
Well, I mean, I witnessed this firsthand at your Catoosa school board meeting. I watched this big group of people come in, a lot of people talking, and everybody was energized, and it was like, whoa. But I realized halfway through that no matter what anybody said, no matter what was going to happen, that piece of paper was going to be signed, and it was going to go into effect, and there wasn't a thing anybody could do about it.
exactly.
That's our fault. Mm-hmm. We need to start now implementing things to where we don't ever get to that spot again.
You're exactly right. And something on that is something very important is there has to be we now have to start rethinking what checks and balances mean. Because one set of the equation should not be able to just run roughshod over all the other systems.
Agreed.
And so your local delegation, your state reps, your state senators have immense power to be able to check this and say, whoa, we need to actually start check and balancing here. We're not trying in any way to take down the system. Mm-hmm. We're trying to slowly make them realize there's a problem.
Yes.
You need to go fix it. It's
That's
not my
right.
job to fix it.
That's right.
That's your job.
That's right.
And that's the fundamental difference of like, well, you're just trying to get into play with local politics. No, I'm just trying to get them to do their job.
Exactly. Well, I think the last couple of years I can tell you, I know some of these people's eyes are opened up. And tomorrow, like I said, at the Capitol, it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be even more eye-opening to, we're putting people on the spot now. It's not we're on the same side here. We're wanting to stop this usual business and get back to where, like you said, the business usual is why we're here.
Yes. And that's the
We've
thing.
got to climb out.
For 2 months, we don't do anything, and then a month is just they
Bam,
ram
bam,
everything
bam.
in, and it's we are to the point as a state where there's so many problems hitting us probably every couple of months.
Right.
Now we need to start saying, okay, maybe we need a new, not really a longer legislative session, but a new way of doing business.
A new way of doing things,
and
right.
that's what it's going to take is us doing the business of the people.
That's right.
But we are,
Okay.
like I said, we have a long way to go.
All right. I know we're just a little over an hour. So I want to cover one more thing, and then we'll go to comments, okay?
Absolutely.
A friend of mine, and in your county, we know that we've dealt with this. So one topic that's been brought up to me by a few different people is speed cameras, right? It's hot and heavy right now. We know Floyd County's got speed cameras everywhere. We know Catoosa County have had issues. So what are your thoughts on speed cameras? A lot of people are saying these are unconstitutional from the beginning. And how do we go into the next legislative session with looking at this from a reality standpoint?
So there will be legislation. I haven't seen any type of legislation. I just know there will be on speed cameras. I don't know what type or what it's going to be focused towards. My two fundamental problems is one, yes, I do believe in some point it has to be unconstitutional because you can't face the person accusing you.
Right.
The second thing is most of this revenue goes to out-of-state sources.
Mm-hmm.
They put
Yes.
a camera up and they get their chunky 50%, and then they send it to some locality, and the locality doesn't know,
Right.
what you got ticketed for. So you can
Well,
go.
it's yet another money game, right?
Exactly.
You're being kind of what is that? I can't remember the terminology, but it's basically a revenue generator is all it is.
Well, then this is the other fundamental problem is how it's not set up this way, but it's just so blatant. It's because of Christmas train, because it sounded like a good idea, so they stuck it in there, and now it's kind of morphed into multiple issues. And so you have speed cameras here. The other issue is some cops can only run radar down certain roads.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these roads, and I don't want to say which, but
Sure.
don't even, like our school zoned, can't even get tickets because they're not in these radar allowed roads. And so you have problem B and problem C and all these, and you're right, it is a revenue generator. And so you have all these problems that they're trying to fix, but at the end of the day still causes the same problems, causes the same irritations, and is just a money cow against
Right.
the people. And so that's kind of my feel, I guess is the best way to put it. And so it's, yes, it definitely is an issue that we need to address.
Well,
but
good.
it's-
And I know, absolutely. And like I said, I just want you to go into this next session with these things in mind and just be aware, we're just trying to find a balance here.
Absolutely.
Balance to everything. But, man, I'm going to tell y'all, I know y'all been seeing me a lot this weekend, but if you're not watching this show today, this has been dynamite here. So we're going to go to comments and see what some people have said. I haven't looked at any of the comments this evening, so here we go. Oh, man. Okay. Might have to skip over a few, y'all. Hang on. Oh, Lord. Let me go way back up here. So, all right. Let's see here. Wow, we got a good bit of people watching tonight too. That's wonderful. So, Sharon Holland, as always, thank you for being there. She's my biggest supporter, man. Dorothy Michelle, good to see you from Blue Ridge. We've got a question from Barbara. Why does the state allow our funding of our school boards? Most of our tax dollars go for schools. It appears they can raise tax all the time. So, you want to just give a quick nutshell? It's a separate millage rate. It's all based on the Equalization Act. And it was written into law, correct?
Yes, about 1980. There's a whole formula on how to do it. We've been trying to change it for a while, but I've spoken with a lot of different levels of leadership, and they're frankly like, it's just so. I mean, 2 governors have tried to do it, and it's just failed.
Yeah.
Because of all these extra, frankly, people don't want their. What if we get less money?
Yes.
And that's the fundamental fears, but. We do need fundamental change in our school
Yeah.
systems. I'm a big believer it should follow the student.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's just average it out to the average student. If that student wants to go to homeschooling, wants to go to private school, wants to do a co-op, that's where the money should follow.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in that. But that being said, I don't see it changing in a very long time.
Yeah.
But that's where we can affect local change,
That's
and that's
right.
where local change comes in effect, and that's why I say please go look at your Board of Education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's we just went offline for some reason. Dang. All right. Well, look, I'll we made it all the way through that show. We made it all the way through the show in the comments. So why don't you and I finish the comments, and then we'll post it. So I still got them pulled up here, which is wonderful. Wow. See, never mind. Yeah, there we go. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Okay, so in other words, we just got cut off, and then we're right back on. So this will probably says I'm unable to connect to Facebook. So, well, I tell you what, we'll edit this part out, and then I'm going to start over with the comments. So, hang on a minute. I don't know why. Let's just go ahead and stop the stream. Man, we made it in the. Okay, perfect. All right, so we'll go back to comments here. So I'm going to start back with comments, and then we're still recording, and I'll put this out. Okay, so I think we covered that. Barbara, good to see you. Calvin, good to see you. Kim. Charles Stoker says, do you believe dual citizenship in USA should be eliminated? What he's talking about is dual citizenship with Israel and stuff. Do we have an issue with that in Georgia that you know
I
of?
don't think we really have an issue.
Okay,
About
all right.
I'm familiar with this.
Okay.
Being a state issue.
Here's one from Betty Brady. Good to see you, Betty. It says, why do all rate increases for schools go to salaries while our school children go all day without food? It should be about taking care of the children instead of enriching the educators.
So the problem is, you're right and sort of off. And what I mean by that is, the problem is it's all going to administrators. It's not going to the teachers either.
Right.
We need to absolutely rethink how we do our teacher pay salaries. to where they do get what they need and have. But you are right. We don't provide food. A lot of our kids come to our schools hungry. Especially the lower end spectrum do.
Right.
It's and they can't pay attention because they're so hungry, and it's a
Right.
sad situation. We absolutely should look at these things and fix it.
Do we have a committee that's looking at like an education committee that's
Yes.
like looking at this?
We do have an education committee. It is ran by a previous superintendent.
Okay.
So he's very superintendent heavy when it
I
comes
gotcha.
to the school system's pretty good. And we have some disagreements, a lot of disagreements. So the best way to put it is, our problem is we have a huge administrative overflow. We have, I think, the average high school now has 3 assistant principals and like 1 or 2 principals on average. And they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have all of these extra lines of just fluff.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's really the fundamental problem is go through all of these things can be open records requested. All of these things are public access and public on some website that you can go through and see every administrator, every educator. A lot of educators don't get paid what they are worth. A lot of
Well, it's very top heavy based on administrative side, and the spectrum goes down. Yet you have to keep in mind that education is the highest job. What do you call it? They have more jobs than anywhere in every county. They're the number one employed part of a county.
Yes.
So there's a lot of money there.
Exactly.
A lot of stuff happening.
And so, and each county is different. My county, that's 95% staff and salary. In Chickamauga, in city school systems, only 75%. So there's definitely a lot of top heaviness going on. And so that's what I recommend go look at, because that's when you can see a lot of teachers don't get paid what they need to be, but at the same, and that's where especially if you look at their school classes, a lot of times they don't have the supplies to teach.
Yep.
And
it's almost a slap in the face when you get a 30% property tax increase, but yet the first day of school you're asked to buy $150 worth of stuff. You're constantly asked to come home and do all these fundraisers. And it's like, where is all this money at?
And that's exactly right. Is at a point it needs to be about educating the child, and that's where I think we have gotten away from it.
I agree.
And we can see that with our test scores. We can see that with a lot of different things, and there's so many different issues that go into this. I'm kind of glossing over, but it does start with finances, and we do need to rein it in.
Absolutely. So, good question, Betty. Christopher Rayleigh, it's good to see you, sir. Charles says all tax-exempt projects that are funded by donations are not good for the citizens. Okay, yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. Carolyn Peters, good to have you, says, it is also ridiculous to ask 75-year-old citizens to pay the amount of school tax we are forced to pay. I, of course, want good schools for the children in Catoosa County, but my last family member in a Catoosa County school is my grandson and is now 26. There is a spending problem linked to that somehow. So any thoughts on that?
No, that's exactly right. There are easy ways that there should be some tax exemptions. Example, you have a person on Social Security barely bringing in $1,300 on Social Security a month. That's their fixed income for the rest of their life. The feds and the state have partially said that's good enough to live on, and then we tax them $900 a year on their home. It's like that. Those two thoughts don't line up
Exactly.
and so you have to be able to say, once you get Social Security, absolutely, should those living in excess pay something?
Sure.
Yeah, but on average, should you get an exemption? Right. Absolutely. And so that's where you have that fine line. I think a lot of people in Catoosa County and in other counties will be interested to see what we do this session.
Okay.
Because I think we are very excited about being able to do something.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow. All right. Great question from Carolyn Peters. Thank you. Christopher Rayleigh said the cities spend money on stupid trash that need a SPLOST to help people. Well, that's government as a whole. So, Greasy Boots, great to have you tonight. It says, I'm sure it doesn't help that the Senate Finance Committee chair is a rhino of the highest order. So, I think he's talking about Mitch McConnell. Or who is our Senate Finance Committee in
Senate Finance Committee is Tillery.
Tillery? Okay, is it Tom Tillery?
No, it's.
I can't remember.
I don't remember his first name. But.
Crap. I'll get with Greasy Boots on that to find out exactly who, because I mean that is who's going to be the Senate Finance Committee chair is Mitch McConnell, the one that comes to my mind. Christopher Rayleigh says we want peace and freedom. They want taxes and control. Amen. Taxation is theft. You know, at the same time, I'm a realist here. I would love to see taxes eliminated. I understand reality is that taxes cannot be eliminated, but the complexities of what we discussed tonight are way out of balance, and having legislators come on and acknowledge that is half the battle. So that's really what's on people's minds this year. And
no, absolutely, and that's my area especially. That's what I love to talk about. That's what we do need to address.
Right.
And it's like I said, we need study committees. We need to be able, and not just talk about it. Let's do it.
Exactly.
But you have to have a plan, and the problem is we don't have a plan.
Yep, and our federal funding about Ukraine and illegal immigration, which, you know, hey, 2025, we're seeing a lot of these legislators that have been very quiet in the last year or so. Now it's January, and they're looking ahead at 26, and they're out there spouting all kinds of wonderful stuff to the people. That's interesting. Chris says, I've seen where county employees, whistleblowers talking about getting a raise and county car for sex. All right, yeah, I got you there. I'm sure there's all kinds of things that happen like that. Charles Soka says, legislature only debate what ways taxes are instituted and how much and who is taxed. Stop taxing. Our county was founded upon tariffs and voluntary funding. We have over 5 million confusing laws on the books, and no one knows what they are, but keep passing more. So that's a good statement. I mean, obviously, that's some hot topic here. I'm kind of anxious to see what's coming up in 25. So. Let's see. Angela Rubino says Floyd County has a homestead exemption already. Floyd County schools are opting out of this homestead so they aren't capped at knees, so they can still raise the millage rate. What was the point of the bill? Why would we expect the school government to hold themselves accountable to not overspend and bloat the administrative pockets? So,
some school systems, of course, don't want to cap it. And again, some school systems already have ones in place. So you have to have, especially when it's a statewide exemption, you had to have some mechanism to opt out of. Do I believe it was a perfect bill and we could have absolutely made that more accountable and more streamlined? Absolutely. But we did give that to local authorities and your local school board. So if you're right now, you have it. If your local school system decides not to do it, that's on your local school system, and they should be held accountable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I know Floyd County, man. Just seems like it's a draconian place right now in their government, in their local government. Charles Stoker says conversation is misdirection. Stop the taxes. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, we definitely need to eliminate some of these taxes. Absolutely. And the only way we're going to do it is to work with our legislators, let them know how the people feel. And continue to keep this conversation in the forefront, because if we just show up with pitchforks every other time we're having to pay more taxes, it's already too late. Just like we said, I really believe
Absolutely.
that. So.
And we do need to get rid of a lot of our taxes.
Let's see. Georgia is flush AF. Charles says, did you endorse Rhino Brian Kemp for governor? You want to answer that?
I never endorsed anybody for governor.
Okay, gotcha. Billions in coffers. Let's see. Chris has some great comments. I just got to go through some of them. Change is going in the wrong direction. I hope that's wrong, Chris. I hope change is going in the right direction. I really do. So, especially when it comes to the next election cycle in Georgia. Charles says, give the surplus back to its rightful owner instead of finding new ways to spend money like pay raises.
And that is something we are doing. We are giving of the surplus, which is not enough, but we are giving back $1 billion.
Yeah, the tax incentive. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's.
The problem is we take it, then we give it back, and we still pay that individual for taking and giving it back.
Well, it's just kind of weak, man. I'm just going to say it's weak. But coming from the current administration, I'm not surprised.
No, exactly, and that's the problem. Is why are we taking it?
Yeah.
why did we not, like, they always like, we're fine tuning. No, there's no long-term plan.
Right.
And that's the problem. And that's what we're all trying to
Well,
do.
it's just like it's like going to the, well, I wouldn't even say dentist, because if you go to the dentist, you're actually getting something fixed, right? But it's basically like I don't know what to say. It's almost like maybe taking the groceries out and getting a piece of candy, right? It's very weak to me, and I just.
Yes.
Well, after all we're talking about, right? We're not talking about eliminating taxes, but we got all this revenue. We're going to create all these new ways for you to mess with your taxes, right? But we're not talking about eliminating them. Here's a piece of candy on the way out. It just,
exactly. No, exactly right.
I can't. So, okay. Christopher says the state is against us, and that is exactly what we're fighting against. We don't want the state to be against us. We want to flip that around. Angela Rubino says 40% increase sounds administrative pay increases.
That's what
I think,
about.
and if you
And
most
because I went through all their budgets, and the teacher's salary line item did not change.
Mm-hmm, exactly,
So they were
exactly.
required to pay increases, pay raises. So clearly they got rid of some of the positions to balance out that line item. That line item did not change across almost all the schools.
Mm-hmm.
What changed? Administrative,
Yeah.
healthcare costs, all these additional costs. Some state mandates, some not.
Right.
But very little. Again, third of the problem is state. That most of the problem is local spending.
Yep, absolutely. You're on to something, Angela. We need to have people looking into this so we can just bring it to the forefront. The more we figure out about these systems, the more that we, the people, can get involved, the less they can do with that kind of thing. So, Greasy Boots says, this is just one more reason we need term limits. Career politicians are benefiting from the system. There's a lot, how do you feel about term limits? I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not against term limits, right? My eyes have been open just a little bit to term limits because of the argument that even if you had term limits, you still wouldn't be solving the problem, right?
Yes, and so I'm all for executive term limits. My problem is you need some form of bureaucratic term limits,
Right?
Because the problem is you have city managers, county managers, all these different managing superintendents that are in there longer than the person serving,
Right.
and so they get this authority around them
Exactly.
that they're able to manipulate and control. They still get what the system doesn't change, just the people.
Exactly.
And that's the fundamental problem. When it comes to, there's so much power when it comes to certain boards. I'm all for term limits on certain boards. Because you have to have this clear rotation.
You really do.
And I'm not, like, it can be something very rational, 12 years, 8 years. Something, give them enough time to serve, and then
Right.
find somebody else. But that being said, I do think you need to also look at like a bureaucratic level. And I don't know how you do that. It's just, again, it's one of those ideas floating around in my head.
It's the complexity, yeah.
Yeah, and then the second problem is when you introduce these term limits, there's always a way around them. Like in Florida, in some counties in Georgia, what happens is they just move around, they move the districts around, and then they can run again.
Well, and yeah, you even look like that. That's the whole. Like I said, the system's more complex. You have somebody like Mitch McConnell who gives up his Senate majority seat, and now he's over Senate appropriations.
Yes,
he's glitching out. That's a problem.
Exactly, and there's absolutely a point when you are no longer helpful to your constituents.
Yeah.
The second problem is, then the vice point is, I always also say I'm a long-term bond. I am there the longer I am there, the better I can serve my community.
Right.
Because I now have, a committee chair. I can do this, and you can see this like a Charlize Berg.
Yes.
She has been there almost going on 8 years, and there, she's moving through the ranks to be able to do more things.
Yes.
And so that's the problem is most of the people that we've had on our side get in there, realize it's terrible for 2 to 4 years, and then leave. In Catoosa County, we've had people that are there for 4 to 6 years, and don't do anything for the constituents, and at the end of the day, they just kind of they take their little pension and they go home, and they haven't built up any credit at the Capitol to push anything we need on account. And then you get other individuals on the state Senate side, and other individuals that sit there so long they amass so much power, it becomes about them and not their constituent. And
No,
so
I agree.
there is absolutely a balance. I don't know where that balance is.
No, you said it that's my argument. Not even against term limits, but if we're holding our legislators accountable from the beginning, like you say, if we're making sure that they're abiding by the Constitution and they're voting along the lines of the Constitution and what's good for Georgia, you won't have to necessarily need term limits because the people, it's the partnership, and we've gotten away from that, right?
Absolutely, and but it's also about your individual legislator. And everybody says their legislator is great. It's not meant for that. It's meant for there is some legislators that want to have a servant's heart, but a lot of them, it's about it's about the position.
It's about
what
the
they
position,
and
right.
it was like there's so much corruption. The corruption is about the social apparatus around that position and what that position glorifies that legislator in.
Yep.
And that's the fundamental problem.
Yep, I agree, man. I do agree. So, War Room, Gwinnett County, good to have you. Says this is the Great Reset. It has no teeth without the dome opening the door for the counties to self-implode. So, yeah, he's got a point there. Too. There's always plans. We're hoping that the people are awake enough and working enough that we stop some of this implosion. I really believe that. Let's see. Angela Rubino says, time to regain the state control by the people, restoreamerica.org. All right, well, there's a link there. Anybody wants to go check it out. Charles says, government schools are corrupt beyond redemption. Abolish government schools. So we definitely got to have, there's no question that the Georgia school system, all education system, is fundamentally flawed in its current state. We've got to keep hammering that away. So that's Christopher said Trump promised paper ballots on day one. Yeah, that's true. Now, you even had Marjorie Taylor Greene come out with paper ballots, talking about paper ballots the other day. I was a little like, wow, she's actually talking about it. So, I'm hoping that we can catch fire a little bit because I believe in an open source system, right? Because technology is technology, and it's integrated every day more and more. But this is the proprietary that really gets a hold of us, right? So if we came up with an election system that was an open source system that was so easy anybody could see it,
absolutely,
there would be no complexity there. You'd be able to track, and of course that's not what they want, but that's what would be the most transparent, right? So it's either that or you take us back to paper ballots, but we the people do not want dominion. So.
No, absolutely.
Okay. War Room says he's a great guest. We may need to get the both of you in studio and do an hour ASAP. This conversation is key. It's about the money. We got to start naming names at some point. It's very true. We're blessed up here, Antonio. We have good representation, and we want to keep it that way. And we're going to keep it that way, right? And it takes that partnership of getting out and talking and getting out to the masses. So, Christopher Rayleigh says, I blame the Georgia GOP. Well, part of that is getting involved with the GOP.
Anybody can get involved with the GOP. Please get involved.
I hope, Chris, wherever you're at, that you're going to get involved with the GOP. I specifically got involved with the GOP so I could become a member that would make a difference, right? And that would take away some of that blame and some of that the accountability, and then put it on our backs where we're actively fighting as a group in this state to hold our constituents accountable and to change legislation and bring these things that we're talking about tonight up to the forefront, right? If we're not out here talking to our legislators about what's on our mind and what we want to see change, how can they do anything about it?
Absolutely.
So I agree. Let's say it says we had complete control for decades, and again, that was us letting things run amok while they had their hands in the cookie jar.
Yep. We thought that just because Republicans were in power, they'd do the right thing.
I was told by my state senator, I said, you don't need to worry about none of this. We're holding the line, and now look where we're at in 2025. Exactly. So Charles says, why has Mitchell Horner been silent on same-day voting paper ballots counted in precincts day of election? So have you been silent?
I honestly don't know what
okay. Yeah, I don't know either. We may have to have some clarification on that. It says the state is going Democrat from Chris. It's definitely a bruised state, and again, we're trying to change that. And part of that is getting good legislators in there who's going to do the right thing. So let's see, abolish the Fed. I agree with that. Let's see. Barbara says this shouldn't be a red or blue issue. You people were voted in for the people of Georgia. Amen. Angela says if someone's business is as lucrative as they propose, there is no need for incentives or tax abatements off the people's back. So, again, I can't find any fault in that. We've got some fundamental issues to change, and it starts here in 2025.
Exactly. It's
I
your
mean,
tax dollar, and
right.
that's where it's going.
That-
is to electric car manufacturing and to film tax credits. It's ridiculous.
exactly. And the federal government just had to prop up Rivian with $6 billion for crying out loud.
No, it's a bailout from the state and a bailout from the feds. And so, I mean, look at this. The biggest argument I had at that Capitol Forum when I was arguing against the electric car industries was look at the stock price of Rivian over the last 2 years. It's gone 97% down in value.
Yeah.
And you're saying, let's give all these tax credits to the company that's failing. I mean, it's the equivalent of Ford in 2008 and GE. I mean, it's just a bailout.
And I think that's that's a fundamental problem that we have to solve as Republicans. The Democrats aren't even doing this. We're fighting ourselves on this, and it's getting out of hand, right? Charles, is your voice of the people go to school board or anywhere and be that voice? So far you are talking and nothing is getting done for the citizens. I'm not saying you're wrong, but something's getting done. We're getting some things done. It may be very slow, but I'm telling you,
it's very incremental, unfortunately.
I mean, I feel like 2025 though is going to be another big year. We've got so many hurdles past us, and the vast majority of us were behaving and trying to push the Agenda 47, and get Trump over that finish line.
Absolutely, we got them.
Election integrity.
Absolutely, and House Bill 581. I'm very proud of that. It does cap our massive spending that is going to affect your homeowners' prices.
Yeah, I think.
And so we're moving the ball, but it is slowly. I apologize. I am a freshman and slowly moving out of the freshman status.
Look,
but it takes time, and it's very incremental.
Well, look what we've learned in the last year that most people never knew. 2 separate millage rates, school board. When pushback, they're gonna put me in jail. We've learned that in Whitfield County, your county. We've learned so much because it is the people's responsibility to be involved in this, and it's uncomfortable to a lot of these legislators. I think it really is.
It is.
But if we're not involved, and
we have to get them out of their shell. Like I said, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It takes time, but we are slowly moving that ball, and I think you are seeing more of a conservative base be built in the state legislature.
I think heads are turning. I really do. Chris says Simp came into office with lawsuits over $500,000 in personal debts. Now he's worth $1 million. He's probably worth more than that. So, let's see. Greasy Boots. What a coincidence. Senate Finance Chairman Chuck Huffstetler is also Raffensperger's biggest donor. So, yeah, we know we've got problems, man. We're gonna have to, address with some of these people. So, Dominion violates state law. We covered that. China Kemp sold us out. There's a lot to unpack there. Charles says, why are you supporting Rhino Kemp, Pumpet, Josh McCoon? So we're not going into any name calling here, or I appreciate the comment, Charles, but we're not going there tonight. Forensic audits proved the server pinged China. War Room, Gwinnett County. With all due respect, there's nothing to study. The legislature works for the people. The people want them gone. That's it. That's all. They are illegal from what we know, and they are not certifiable. Amen to that. Militia Radio. Good to have you, Militia. Says, buy more ammo. Well, I don't know. I mean, 2025 is already, just going wild these first couple of weeks. So I'm praying that we can get through the 20th and get some boots on the ground, get moving. Yep. I don't want to go into that tonight. I've discussed it this weekend. Chris says, let's see. I have a photo of Brian Marty on a private jet with a Chinese woman. War Room says they will not do what the people want done. That's it. That's all. Tell him those who won't support it will not get support. We're done with the garbage, period. I agree. And that's what I said earlier, Antonio, we're done with the garbage. And yes, Christopher Rayleigh says gagop.inc. We're not going to get into that tonight. I think it's some problems that are coming that will need to be addressed down the road. Charles says, do you condemn the genocide by Israel that they continue to perpetuate upon women and children in Gaza? That's for a whole different show. We're not going to open up that can of worms. Says, are these videos being recorded and shared on YouTube? Yes, they are.
And I can address that previous statement.
You
Just
can?
Real quick. I lived
Sure.
in Israel for 3 years. My
Did
parents
you?
were missionaries to the state of Israel.
Okay.
So I've witnessed both cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a proud supporter of the state of Israel.
Right. Hey, there is a lot to unpack with Israel and their relationship to America. I have a tinfoil hat, and I've watched a lot of the videos, and I've seen a lot of things. I have seen the 13-hour documentary, Europa. Look, I don't know what to think about all these things, and if you can, we obviously are no different if we just take an entire group of people and throw them into one category. So obviously there's some problems and issues there, and I do believe we shouldn't necessarily have the amount of dual citizenship that we have. I believe there's some real issues that we can't talk about because it's a very protected conversation. Obviously, I'm not against Israel any more than I'm against anything. I'm for our own backyard, America first, always. But I'm telling you, we can't have the conversations right here when we're talking about moving forward for America first. And I appreciate it, but I kind of feel the same way. I'm not against Israel by any stretch of the means. Is there things that we can talk about? Absolutely, but I'm not that guy. If you want to... Right now, Elon Musk and Ian Carroll are having some real big conversations on X about that right now, and that's out of my league. So, Charles, I'm actually going to send you some of the. I'm going to share with you some of the conversations they're having right now because it's hot and heavy, but not here, not tonight. So, I condemn genocide by anybody for that matter. So, let's see. 2A, constitutional carry, absolutely, shall not be infringed. Yes. And the ATF, Chris, is going to have a lot to answer for, I believe, with this next administration. So, Charles says, the people hired you to get things done, therefore we should not have to beg our elected servants. No, it takes you getting involved. That's why we elected to you. Appoint our own citizen committee. Your job is to make things happen favorable to the citizens. So far, paper tigers don't get things done. I want to clarify that where I don't want any favors from Mitchell Horner. Mitchell, you need me a lot more than I need you, right? And that's the relationship that we have. So I'm not looking for favors. And I know that what Charles typed isn't what he's saying. But what we're looking for is we want things to be constitutional. We want things to be in line for the people, not favorable to the people. This is the relationship we have to have. The favors are what got us here. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So we're not looking for favors. We're looking for an honest discussion and some reality checks, right? But good comment nonetheless. China Kemp is a rhino. That's from Christopher Rayleigh. That we'll be crossing bridges there. We've got a lot of work to do. If you don't like the leadership that you have in this state, right? It's up to you, and it's up to all of us to find people. We can gripe about legislators all day long, right? But if we, the people, don't have a hand in finding the right representation and getting them to the forefront, right, regardless of all the bureaucracy or the money, if we're not willing to find somebody to replace these people that we talk about, then we're in no better standing, right? Because all we're doing is popping our fist down on the table. So if you don't like our leadership, we need to be actively searching for leadership, right? So that's a homework assignment for all of you out there. And he says, I've seen more conservative Democrats. Let's see. It says, rhinos are worse than Democrats. Rhinos are self-serving Democrats just pretending to be a Republican. That's fine. So identify the rhinos, and we need to find people that run against them that are conservative and ready to fight. So says stop blaming everyone for your failure to make things happen. Don't know what that's about. Stop blaming the people. Let's see. And War Room says, who cares about the vote when the machines secure the machine in Georgia? That's true. And then we've covered that, right? A lot of people are still, even after the 24 election, people are still, that's one of their hot topics is Dominion. So, absolutely. It says, Charles says, because our elected servants have been serving themselves and the good old boy buddy deep state. And we're here to change that, Charles. Let's see. I had a couple comments here that didn't get, for some reason. Okay, the speed cameras are extortion from Aaron Spears. I think we kind of covered that. Yeah, I mean, hey, you need to talk to your legislator, and you're part of the neck, and your neck of the woods, and tell them how you feel about these cameras. You know, start up a conversation with them and bring it to them. It's not like they're going to bite your head off, but let them know, like, hey, you don't like the speed cameras. You don't think they're constitutional. They need to hear from us, right?
Exactly.
100%. Let's see here. Antonio says, replying to Aaron Spears, there's cameras will be repurposed to violate privacy just like in China. Well, I mean, that's an obvious goal, I believe. We're in a big brother state, security state. That's why, again, we need to be bringing these up to the forefront, right? And drawing a line in the sand of where we want these things to stop. So, Christopher Lee Rayleigh says, nothing will happen we want. I'm going to continue to fight until we get things, not necessarily that we want, but we need, right?
Absolutely.
Back to the basics.
Yes,
Back to the basics.
Exactly.
Angela says, people's money stolen by red speed, 67% goes to the county or city, to their general funds, constantly in taxpayers' pockets. So, basically what she's saying was what you said about how a lot of these funds, they get sent off to other places. So,
Yes.
since it's recorded, we'll make this an addendum because we keep your comments going. Sometimes I got to skip over a few just for lack of time, but I always give my guests the final comment. So, just tell us what's your view on 2025 moving forward?
Well, like I said, I'm a pessimist and an optimist, so I do hope that Georgia starts getting in line some of the things that we really need to. We need to start holding all the spending accountable. We need to start addressing our local issues. And so I do think that we'll see some wonderful wins this year, federally and probably statewide. But that being said, it will take a lot of fighting.
Right.
It will take a lot of holding the line. And unfortunately, a lot of these issues that are like Medicaid expansion, so thoroughly against, it's going to take up so much of the oxygen. We do have lower issues we have to deal with. Just in our own county, we haven't even talked about the water infrastructure problem.
Oh yes,
there's
it's
so
hot
many
and heavy
different,
here.
Exactly, there's so many issues that we do need to address that I hope we can, and I think we can to some extent.
Okay.
And so I am excited about that. And like I said, I'm excited for a session tomorrow, but I'm also not.
I understand.
It's a love-hate relationship still, but I do appreciate you, Roy, for having me on here.
Yeah, Mitchell, thanks. We're going to do this again. Like I said,
absolutely.
We want conversations. We want you to tell us how you see things. We want to tell you how we see things, and we want to try to meet in the middle. It's the only way we're going to get through
And I'm here to
this.
represent my people. I'm here to represent you guys. So if y'all have anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you need anything, don't hesitate.
Okay, man. Thanks for being on the
Absolutely,
show.
thank you.
Folks, appreciate everybody, all the comments, all the concerns. Again, the only way we're going to get this going is to keep the conversation alive. We're going to have to engage with each other. We can't just let one side just sit on their hands. That's all there is to it. So if you're watching this was the addendum I posted on Facebook, and the whole thing will be on YouTube. So God bless, and hopefully I'll see a lot of you down at the Capitol tomorrow, and we'll move on to the next show. Y'all have a good evening.
Legislature legalized unverifiable voting in 2000.
Like you said, to but they're getting beauty.
They said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsement from Georgia carriers that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign.